everybody, and welcome to this all-new episode of the Northern Virginia Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and we have a great show for you tonight. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Phil Polizzotti, the assistant coach for the Lake Braddock Bruins lacrosse team. We're going to have an all-new Triple Edge lacrosse segment for you tonight. But before we jump into that, first of all, we want to thank the folks that help make our program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. Also, special thanks to Craig Strabutzel for all the fantastic photos that he provides to us, and to our good friend Dan Sousa for all the content, video, photos, and everything that he does for us every week. Don't forget that you can get copies of this program at www.pressboxvideo.com, and you can check out our webpage where we have highlights, interviews, and more. You can become a fan of the Northern Virginia Sports Report on our Facebook page, and don't forget to send us any story ideas, comments, suggestions, or any information that you want to share with us. Well, as always, we're going to start out with going through a couple of news and notes from around the area because there have been a lot of announcements with head coaching vacancies being filled. So let's go through some of those. First of all, we reported earlier in the year that the Parkview football coaching position was open. It was vacated by Andy Hill, who's moved on and over to South Lakes. Well, that position has been filled by Ferris Eways, the new head coach of the Parkview football program. Also, a bit of some shocking news coming out of Freedom High School this week. It's been announced that Jason Eldridge will not be returning as the head coach of the Freedom Girls basketball program. Of course, Eldridge has led that team to 2 back-to-back state championships, and the official report is that he is pursuing other head coaching opportunities, and that was the reason for his resignation. Finally, a little news that will be interesting to all of you Herndon fans. Gary Hall, former Herndon boys basketball coach, has announced that he'll be the new head coach at Notre Dame Prep in Middleburg. Of course, Hall was over at Herndon for quite some time, garnering lots of honors while with the Hornets. He's been with Briar Woods for the past few seasons where his children go to school, and now will be moving on to Notre Dame Prep. Well, we also have some college signings that we want to talk about. So first of all, Briar Woods catcher Logan Harris has announced that he'll be going to Greensboro College next year. So congratulations to Logan. And big news over at Stonebridge, because if you remember during the fall, we focused a lot on this Stonebridge football program that's had so much success over the past few years, and they recently had a signing day where lots of their football players signed their letters of intent. You see there Mitchell Freitas, Mike Gertie, Eric Volts, Ricky Wingate, and Mike Mattingly all participating in that ceremony. A great picture there provided by Dan Sousa from Vita Loudon, who was there to interview the players and talk with them a little bit about their college choices. But it's such a great showing for them that they've had so many players go on to play at the next level. Obviously, Mickey Thompson, one of the best coaches from around this area. And then finally, also today, over at Loudoun Valley, lots of volleyball players doing their college signings. Of course, this Loudoun Valley team, we've also talked about them during the program in the fall because it's such a great program, definitely indicated by the fact that 5 players will be moving on to play at the next level next year. All right, well, we've held you in suspense long enough. It is finally time for the Triple Edge lacrosse segment. First of all, starting off with the Triple Edge boys lacrosse segment. And Phil, I know you've been talking with a lot of coaches and have put together a poll of what the coaches think are the top teams in the area right now. And some people who might not follow lacrosse as closely might be a little surprised that West Springfield has really been the player that's been the team that's been getting a lot of attention so far this season, and the coaches are giving them a lot of respect.
Well, yeah, in this particular week, they garnered all first place votes from all 19 coaches that voted. So you'll see on the screen where they got 190 points, and they're a very athletic team, and we had the unfortunate experience of playing them last night, and they beat us up pretty well, 11-4. They're extremely athletic, like I said. They have a great defense and a great offense, and the coaches, they know that they're going to be a tough team to beat, and I think it's justified.
All right, and number 2 in the rankings is the Langley boys lacrosse team, and Coach Earl Brewer is on the phone. Coach, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Monica. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much, Coach, and congratulations. You guys had a big win over Fairfax last night. Can you talk a little bit about the game and what you thought you did well?
We came out and we played pretty aggressive at first. We got a nice lead at halftime, and it was a good game because we have a deep team. We have a lot of kids in our team, and we got everybody in, and that's one of those games that makes the players happy and the parents happy.
Hey, Coach, Phil Polizotti here. How are you?
Hi, Phil. How are you, my friend?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks. Hey, I got a quick question. You know, after winning the championship last year, what do you find are some of the challenges moving forward with this season so far?
Well, Phil, I think you've got to let it go. That was 2009. This is 2010. And it's so easy to want to fall back and relive those great memories, but you can't. This is a brand new group of guys. We have a lot of brand new players on this team.
Right.
And as a coach, and you well know this, Phil, you owe it to them to forget about last year and just work hard and try to have the best season you can.
Oh, that's true. Definitely true. Moving forward, what do you see as as some of your more, I don't want to say important games, but some of the tougher games on your schedule?
Well, Phil, you've known me long enough to know I'm going to say the correct thing here. The most important game is the one tomorrow night against Jefferson.
That's right.
We want to, we have a little saying at Langley, we want to go 1-0 tonight.
Yeah.
And that's really, and that's hard sometimes for coaches, players, parents, everyone to buy into. But you do yourself a disservice and you disrespect your opponent when you look down the line. And I try not to do that, Phil. I try not to look at the schedule, except for who the next game is, and that's Jefferson.
Yeah, no, I understand completely, and in knowing you so well, I figured that would be the answer.
And Coach, one other game I wanted to talk with you about is your game against Stonebridge recently. I know you played that right after spring break, and obviously you guys have a bullseye on your back. Everyone's gunning for you, and that Stonebridge team has a lot of offense. So I wanted to know what you thought your defense did particularly well against them.
Well, we didn't do anything particularly well, Monica, till the end of the game. They played great. They have some exciting players on their team. I told another coach today they were like the old University of Nevada, Las Vegas running rebels. They get up and down the field. They have great shooters. Derek Maltz is just a man-child out there. And his little brother's only a freshman, and the kid had 5 goals against us. We haven't given up 11 goals in a game since, I think, 2005. So that says something for the talent that they have. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be Langley, Madison, Langley, but Stonebridge definitely threw their hat into the playoff picture.
Yeah, that looks like the Liberty District, is going to be one of those tough districts, just like the Patriot and the Concord, moving forward for the seeding and for the, going into the region.
I agree, Phil. I agree.
How surprised are you looking at, the parity across the region in this particular year? I know last year there was a lot as well, but it seems like this year there's even more parity, I think. What do you think is attributed to that?
Phil, I think we've seen this coming. You have a boom in youth lacrosse out there. I was so thrilled by that article in the Post last week, giving us a front page story about how lacrosse has taken off across Northern Virginia. There's so many kids playing. Both my sons play youth lacrosse. I get out on the weekends and see all these little guys running around. And, it's just great. It's taken off. So many of the schools now are better coached. There's great young coaches out there. And there used to just be 4 or 5 schools that every year you could pencil them in. But, there's 8 or 9 schools this year, I think, that have a legitimate chance to win the regional championship.
Right.
Coach,
and I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think after you have a season like your team had last year, you always hope that there are some players on your team that really take that and build on that and really improve and move their game to the next level based on that experience. And I was curious what players on your team you feel like have really stepped up their game this year that weren't necessarily standouts last year but have just improved so much.
I think I can mention a couple guys, a couple midfielders, senior midfielders, Ryan Miller and Brian Clubb. They didn't get that much playing time last year, but both of them have done a great job for us. And I think if you look at both my goalies, I know the talk going into the season was that Langley didn't have a goalie. Well, we have a junior and a sophomore that have both been excellent, and they've split time the whole way. And our problem has not been at the goalie position, and I bet some people going in thought that would be a problem for us. It has not been a problem at all. Both of those guys have worked hard, and they're both playing well. So I'm very excited for both of them.
Yeah, and I have to agree with that. Based on the things that I had heard preseason also was, what's Langley's goalie situation going to be? And Coach hit it right on the head. They have performed very well from what I've seen and talking with the other coaches as well. So.
Well, the problem is keeping them both happy.
Yeah, right. But it's
right.
but that's a good problem to have, Coach.
Yeah, I told my wife it's like having two girlfriends. And she said, "Well, what would you know about that?"
Yeah, no.
But yeah, it's worked out so far so good.
That's great. That's great. So how much do you enjoy coaching your two sons? I bet that's got to be great.
But it's a lot of fun, Phil. My one son's team, the U13 team, I don't have any interaction at all.
Okay.
I'm a fan. I go to the game and watch, and I enjoy the fact that he likes playing the game.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's great. My younger one now, my youngest one plays U11 this year, and he's one of the smaller guys out there, and he gets bounced around quite a bit, but he's a tough little guy, and he gets up. And as a U11 coach, you spend more time like pointing which way to run, like go that way, guys, go that way. And but I enjoy it. It's fun. There's never a dull moment around the Brewer household come springtime.
That's great. I don't have kids, so I live vicariously through other coaches and their experience. So that's awesome. That's awesome.
Coach, last question. Obviously, looking forward, you have the game coming up against Jefferson and then many more tough matches before the postseason starts. Are there particular things that you're particularly focused on right now with working with your team on, or is it just each week presents a new situation and different focuses?
Well, Monica, I think Phil will enjoy this. Today we had shooting practice. We did no other drills except for one little drill. We spent an hour and 20 minutes shooting today.
Oh.
I brought out every old shooting drill I could remember, and I even let my goalies participate. They were shooting, the defensemen were shooting, because last night we had 44 shots against Fairfax, I think, and we had 14 goals, and our shooting percentage was just terrible. And we need to do a better job of that. When you get in these tough district games, every goal is going to count down the line. So we got to do a better job shooting the ball.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head because we didn't spend an hour and 20 minutes today, but we did spend about 45. So I know that feeling well.
Yeah, it's frustrating at times, I tell you. But the kids worked hard today, and I was happy with them.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Well, Coach, it is always a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Coach.
All right, Monica, Phil, take care.
All right, you too. Be well.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right, so Langley obviously getting off to a great start this season, but does have the challenge that everyone is focused on Langley after what they did last year.
Well, yeah, and he says one game at a time, and these are high school kids. It's tough to, you can say it, I guess is what I'm saying, but it is often tough to motivate, and he does a real good job. I've known Coach Brewer since the mid-'90s, and he does a great job with his program, obviously, but that motivation, if you can keep them focused and you can keep them on that track, they've got a great shot to repeat. They really do. But again, there's other teams. Like Coach said, there's 8 or 9 teams that he feels are in the mix, and I think that's across the region. I think all the coaches feel that way.
All right, well, we actually have some highlights of the Langley game last night against Fairfax to show you. So obviously, Coach talking about all the shots they were getting, of course, and not getting as many goals off of those shots. But Langley has a lot of offensive firepower.
Oh yeah, and you're looking at that right there. A couple of those highlights. The first one was a great cross crease feed. Now it looks like they're doing a little bit of dodging and letting her rip. And I don't personally see too much wrong with that, but. They've got some shooters, and if he says they needed work, then I'll believe him. That's for sure. But they look pretty good right there.
Absolutely.
That's a great shot. That looked like Ethan Bailey coming around on the right.
And just seeing the diversity of the shots here, the different looks, a great save there by the keeper, but just the Langley players really mixing it up, seeing high shots, low shots, bounce shots.
Yeah, and that's one thing. In Fairfax has typically had a pretty good keeper, and you have to do that against good goalies. You got to keep them off balance, and again, it's good coaching on Langley's part in that they are constantly doing that. And you'll see right there, that's a great save by that goalie, and right on the doorstep, the Langley goalie. That's a nice move by 25. I don't unfortunately have his name, but.
Well, Andrew Spivey, the goalkeeper, number 15 for Langley, one of those keepers that Coach Brewer talking about that is splitting time in the cage right now for this Accents. But as you said, Phil, a great point. I mean, that's a problem every coach would like to have.
Let me tell you, and at Lake Braddock, we're fortunate. We do have two pretty good goalies. One's a senior this year, and Weiss is Madi, and then our junior, Jeff. I'm drawing a blank here. But anyway, and we have that luxury of being able to put either one in if we have to. And Jeff Berger, excuse me, and Jeff is the starter primarily, and then we put Weiss in if needed and when needed and so forth. But I think every coach would love to have two goalies that could equally split time. So.
Let's go back now. So we talked about the first two teams in our Triple Edge Lacrosse rankings, West Springfield leading the pack and then Langley, but Robinson hot on the heels of Langley. And Robinson is a club every single year Justin Fitzgerald has that team ready to go, particularly during postseason. They're always very dangerous. Yeah,
most definite. They're going to be a team to reckon with, towards the end of the season. It's really strange how their schedule was. I think, they played their second game Monday night, which is very interesting to me. Obviously they were supposed to play us early in the year. That got postponed, pushed towards the end of the season. So they're still trying to find their way, get an identity, and he will have that team ready to play come playoff time. Unfortunately, they had a loss to Chantilly the other night, and that'll shake things up a little bit in the poll moving forward. But Robinson's definitely going to be in the mix, that's for sure. They're very athletic as usual, and they got some kids that can play.
Well, and Coach, you bring up this Chantilly team that people did not know how good they were going to be this year. They lost so much to graduation, and they lost their goalkeeper, one of the best players in the region, Derek Kegeris from last year. And so, but that win over Robinson has to be a confidence builder, but also has to make some people wake up and take a little notice of Chantilly.
Oh, I think so. I think you're right on the button there, Monica. And, again, I use the term athletic because all thess teams you'll see in the top 10 are extremely athletic. You've got multiple crossover athletes, and Chantilly is right there. They are, from what I was told, I didn't get a chance to see the game, but from what I was told, they were more athletic than Robinson, which is, to me, is like, wow, and they're going to be a team that's going to be right there. It's going to come down to the wire. Does, for the seeding going into the district, will it be Westfield? Will it be Chantilly? Will it be Herndon? Will it be Robinson? That district, the Concord districts, is every year. It's tough as heck. And, you never know. Oakton could sneak up on somebody too. So that's going to be great. That's what makes this sport great. You never know on any given night. You just never know.
And then also on the list, of course, is an Annandale team, which I know you've gotten to see so far this year, Coach. They're ranked number 4 in the rankings right now. And so what are your impressions of this Annandale club that's also getting a lot of respect?
Well, very high-powered offense, very deliberate defensively, very well coached, and they love to push the ball up the field. They're another team that loves to score goals. They love to run and gun just like the Stonebridge team. They'll run with anybody. And I think that was, the other night they played West Springfield, and West Springfield, took it to them a little bit. But from what I understand, they had their opportunities. They just didn't cash in on them. So, you never know. You just never know. And the Patriot District's another one of those districts. I keep saying athletic, but all of these teams are athletic, and Annandale's going to be right in the mix too. I don't know if you want to be matched up with them in the first round of the region. That's for sure.
And then there's Westfield on the list.
Oh, yeah.
And Westfield is a team where in years past, people in the Concord District have been very focused on Chantilly, very focused on Robinson, Oakton. But Westfield has Eric Alter, phenomenal attack player.
Yeah.
And people thinking there's a lot more parity in the Concord District this year. So Westfield certainly has a good shot at it.
Yeah, Westfield is another one of those teams where they were under the radar, and people weren't really giving them probably the respect that they deserved. And Eric Alter is a phenomenal midfielder, phenomenal. And he's very tough to defend, whether you have a long pole on him, whether you shut him off. He's a great face-off guy. So in clutch situations, that's the kid I want on the field. That's the kid I want with the ball. And he's going to be another kid to watch as the season progresses, as it comes towards the end, and Westfield's going to be another team, and you're going to scratch your head and you're going to say, wow, they're in the poll, they're fifth. They could be two.
Right.
They really could be by the end of the year.
Which brings up a good point, because looking at the rest of the rankings, teams 6 through 10, so we have Madison, Chantilly, Herndon, Woodson, and Stonebridge.
Right.
Is there anything at this juncture of the season that surprises you, or teams that you think are going to make a lot of movement, or teams you think will be added to the list before it's said and done?
Looking at the top 10, the only team that I personally didn't know too much about was Stonebridge, for whatever reason. But after seeing what they've been capable of doing, after talking with other coaches, at this point, doesn't surprise me one bit. Moving forward, a team you've got to be thinking about and looking at, and might surprise some people, would be Lee, because they are very high scoring. Now, they play Annandale tonight, so by the time the show airs, we don't know. We might have an upset. So it'll be really interesting to see how that transpires. And if they pull off the upset against Annandale, who knows at that point, So that could be a team to be reckoned with also. It's great. That's what makes lacrosse great. That's what makes the region great. And Coach Brewer alluded to it when he said there's 8 or 9 teams that could possibly, make a run for the championship this year.
And speaking of those teams, let's take a closer look at a couple of them, because first of all, West Springfield, as we said, is this team that everyone's been taking notice of. And you see these wins, particularly the first few, 15-2, 13-6, 20-1, not just wins, but really asserting some offensive firepower is this club that has so much talent. Yeah,
and excuse me, and then you look at the Madison, the Herndon, the Loudoun Valley, the Annandale score, and you can then say, well, wait a minute, look they're holding these teams to under 7 goals, and a lot of times as you move forward, that magic number is 8. If you can keep the good teams under 8 goals, and you can score 8, you're going to win. And looking at that graphic, all of their games, they've kept them under that number. And they've scored above that. It's funny how that works out. For whatever reason, that's the percentages. It's crazy.
Right. So certainly something to keep note of, and people talk a lot about the West Springfield offense, but obviously the West Springfield defense is bringing a lot to the table.
Yeah, defensively they're a force to reckon with. A.J. White, and T.J. O'Connell, and Kessler Brown, 3 of the better poles in the region. I'm not going to say best, because there are a lot of very good defenders in the region, but they are quality defensemen. They play a great team defense, and again, go back to that word, they're very athletic, and they great in transition, and then defensively, you saw the graphic, they don't give up goals either. So the goalie's playing well, and that was one of the areas where people were saying, well, West Springfield graduated a very good goalie last year. Will they be able to find that replacement to make that run? Well, I saw it firsthand last night, and yeah, they have a goalie that can help them make that run.
All right, and then two teams we've already talked a little bit about. First of all, Stonebridge, obviously that disappointing loss to Langley, but then rebounding nicely against McLean. And just looking there, Derek Maltz, who Coach Brewer talked about, 7 goals, 1 assist. His little brother Dylan, only a freshman, 3 goals, 2 assists. And so both of those players, and they come from a Lacrosse family. Their dad played at Syracuse. Derek Jr. is going to Syracuse, so it's kind of a great story.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to continue to be a great story because, you know, you look at that graphic and they're putting the goals in. They're scoring goals, and I wouldn't mind having a little brother that was able to score 3 goals as a freshman in a big game, you know, and I'm sure a lot of coaches would love to have that as well. So they're definitely going to be a team to look at, and they're going to make some noise moving forward.
And then finally, the team that you mentioned, Coach, Lee is getting a little bit of attention, but certainly, as you said, could get a lot more attention after tonight, depending on what happens against Annandale. But one player who certainly doesn't need an introduction is Andrew Semp, because he has 47 goals already on the year. And against Stewart, his season high was 12 goals.
Yeah, and 47 goals in, what was it, 4 games? That to me, that's crazy. You know, that's crazy, but
I think he's averaging about 8 per game, which for a high school athlete, that's
amazing. And you know, it's one of those things. You know, us as coaches are looking at each other. I know when you're trying to defend a kid like that, you're like, well, what do you do? You know, and you have to change things up. You know, you're not going to be able to shut him off the whole game. You're not. He's going to get his goals, and he's going to continue to get his goals because he is a great player. He's what we call the real deal, and I know I talked to you about that earlier, but he will score goals. I think what Lee looking forward, what Lee and other teams are going to say, looking at Lee, is okay. Will they have somebody else that can complement him in the tougher games? And you know, again, we'll see tonight. You know, after the result of their Annandale game, and see how that played out, but. I don't want to play Lee, you know, in the first round of the playoffs if I have to, because that kid could beat you by himself. He's pretty darn good.
All right, so a very tough Patriot district, and as we said, a lot of parity this year, so it's going to be interesting to see as we get closer to the postseason which teams seem to be breaking away from the pack, if any, because as we said, there's a lot of parity.
Yeah, and you just don't know, and that's what makes it so exciting moving forward, because we're getting into the meat of the season where some teams will break away now. And okay, they might win the rest of their games, but in that district tournament, you just don't know. You know, you can't say, well, we beat so and so by 5, 6, 7, 8 goals, because who knows what can happen, you know, any given day. And you, as a coach, you have to look at it like that, and you've got to keep your players grounded. And Coach Brewer alluded to that. It's the next game, you know, and if you don't look at the next game and you're looking forward, you're in trouble. You could be in trouble.
All right, let's segue into the Triple Edge girls lacrosse segment and let you take a look at the girls lacrosse rankings, because after last season where people thought Oakton might be having a bit of a rebuilding year and they shocked everybody doing so well, Oakton sitting at the first place position in the rankings, getting a ton of respect as usual. Yeah,
and it's interesting. You look at that and how the coaches voted there. It's a little bit different than the boys poll, where you have multiple teams getting first place votes, which is I looked at that the first time and I said, wow. So you know what that tells me? Again, that tells me you've got 2 districts right there, but now you've got the Patriot district with Woodson and Annandale, okay, and even a national team in Yorktown. So again, it comes back that word parity. Across all the districts, even in the girls' side, and that makes lacrosse in this area grow. It makes it, and that's an awesome thing to have. You know, it's a good thing to have, and I just like that graphic where you see the different coaches saying, well, you know what, I think Chantilly should be, first. I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool. There's no dominating team right now.
And so it'll be interesting to see how the poll continues to unfold over the season. And just like we were mentioning with the boys, if there's one team that breaks away, or if there just continues to be so much parity that in the district and region tournaments, it becomes really exciting because in any given night, you don't know who's going to win.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. You know, I heard a lot of talk that the Madison team is very good. I heard the two young ladies you had tonight, the South County team is pretty good. You know, they got a little bit of a rough start because, you know, the transition with the coaches. I mean, they had a new coach last year. Now they got a new coach this year. That's tough. If you're a junior last year, now you're a senior, you're learning two different schemes in 2 years. I don't envy them, you know, in that regard, because it is difficult to make that transition. And then, especially early in the year, if you've got tough games, you know, so that could be a team to sneak up, you know. That's pretty cool. So
could potentially break into the rankings. And let's take a little bit of a closer look at the two teams sitting on top of the rankings right now, because Oakton and Madison are the two teams that everyone has definitely had on their radar coming into the season after last year. And Gene Counts for Oakton always has a club that's ready to go, particularly in the postseason. But just looking here so far on the season, Oakton undefeated and defeating Chantilly, who was their big nemesis last year. Chantilly, Robinson, Oakton, big battles in the Concord District all last year, and those games are always close. And you see 21-17, a heartbreaker.
That must have been a heck of a game. That's a football score.
Well, and that's the other thing you always expect from Oakton and from Chantilly is the offensive firepower that those two clubs bring to the table. So those battles, and what's great about it is you could end up seeing them play 2-3 times depending on how the tournaments work out. And so that's always a great rivalry. But then there's Madison, a team that has been knocking on the door every single year, it seems. And you see that score at Langley, 12-11, just squeak past the Saxons and then having some decisive wins. But when Oakton and Madison scrimmaged each other before the season started, it was actually Madison that got the win. And so it's going to be interesting to see those two teams meet up as well.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Madison's hurting for putting points on them. They scored 20 and 21, and you know, so that I wouldn't mind seeing that game. That'd be exciting, you know. I know that's a lot of fans love the scoring. I mean, that's in every sport, but especially lacrosse. You know, it's fun to see, you know, 15, 16, 20 goals. That's cool. That's cool.
And as Coach alluded to, we have two players joining us in the Players Lounge this week, Megan Weirs and Jessie Pate from the South County Stallions, having a great season so far. Lounge. This week, I am delighted to be joined by two members of the South County Lacrosse team, Megan Weirs and Jessie Pate. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. You guys have had some big wins this season, and Megan, I know last night you guys had a big win over Herndon. So can you talk a little bit about that game, what you guys did well, what you thought you could improve on?
We came out and the other team actually scored 3 goals in a row. But after that, we picked it up and we were winning the draw and we were transitioning well. And our attack did a really good job at scoring. So once we got it to click, it continued throughout the game.
And Jessie, you guys have had some big wins already in this young season. Can you talk about what you think at this juncture your team is doing well?
Well, I think we're finally clicking as a team. You know, we have a new coach this year, another new coach this year. We had one last year also. And I think it's just the transition from a new coach, new players on varsity. And I think we're finally clicking and really getting it together.
Now, obviously, I know that at this juncture, there are probably some things you guys are looking to improve on as well. So, Megan, are there particular things that you've been focused on in practice since you returned from spring break?
Yeah, we've been working on our transitions a lot, just trying to get the passes quicker, sharper, and shooting is a big thing, but we've improved so much already since we've gone back.
Now, obviously, you guys play in the Patriot district, and it's a very tough district year in and year out. So, Jessie, what's it been like to play in the Patriot district? How have you seen it change over your 4 years with South County?
Well, just this year, Woodson is a new addition to the Patriot district, and that adds a lot of competition for all of the teams. They're a really good team, and they're coming out strong this year, the first year in the Patriot district, and I just think it adds a whole new level of competition on top of the other big teams, West Springfield, Annandale, Lake Braddock, just a lot of good teams in our district.
And speaking of this district, Megan, are there particular teams that you guys have a bit of a rivalry with, or that you particularly look forward to playing every year, or is it just one game at a time?
We don't necessarily have rivals, but we always enjoy playing West Springfield and Lake Braddock and Annandale. They're all really talented and skilled teams, so those are usually the best games because it really brings out the best in each team and each player.
And obviously you guys are both seniors, leaders on this team, and particularly you've had the coaching shifts as you talked about the past few years. So Megan, how have you viewed your leadership role with the club this year?
I think it's not only just me, but all the we have 9 seniors, I think, and I think everyone just brings in the younger kids, and I think all of that, just our togetherness helps, and it's been good.
Jesse, are there particular things you try to do to help the younger players acclimate and prepare particularly for the regular season district?
I think just setting a good example as a senior, being a senior, all of them look up to you no matter if you think they do or not, and setting a good example is really the best way to lead the team.
And obviously you guys have been having a good season so far. What have been some of the highlights of this season so far for you, Megan?
I think, well, even though we lost to 2 really strong teams, it showed us exactly what we need to work on, and it's really awesome to see, to figure out what we need to work on and then doing it perfectly the next game. And I think we've done that really well. So that's probably the best part.
Do you agree, Jesse, or do you kind of have a different take?
I definitely agree. I think that if we had played the harder teams later in the season, it would have been more evenly matched and we probably would have come out with a win. But we've definitely learned from those games, and it's helped us a lot in practice and in games.
All right, well, now I'm going to give you guys a chance to highlight a couple of your teammates. So, Megan, who are some of the athletes on your team that you feel like have really been stepping up, maybe that people didn't necessarily expect at the beginning of the season were going to be big standouts and have really improved?
I think we have a lot of really strong players, but on defense, Alexis Swenson's done really great. In midfield, Katie Fuchs has done an awesome job at the draws, and we just have a lot of really strong players, but those 2 have been a big help for us. I know that.
What do you think, Jesse?
I completely agree with her. Alexa, Katie Fuchs, Tara O'Connor, sophomore, extremely good attack player, has really stepped up. She's extremely good. I think Megan hit all the really strong ones. Tori Rowley is really starting to stand out. I think she's improved so much as the season has gone on.
And Megan, talk a little bit about your goalkeeper and what she brings to the team.
We have 2. We have Sally, and she's been on varsity I think 3 years, and she's been playing our main goalie the past 2. And last night was actually her best game, Herndon, but she's just now clicking in the season, and it's awesome because she barely let any in last night. And the other one's a freshman, I think, Kendall, sophomore, and she's really good for a young age. She'll be awesome when she's a senior.
And then, Jesse, I asked you about highlights of the season so far. What would you say has been the biggest highlight of your career with South County on the lacrosse team?
This is going to sound weird, but last year when we played Robinson in the second round of regionals, I think it was, I just went all out. That was my favorite game. We ended up losing by a lot, but I just felt like I played the best lacrosse that I've ever played that game, and I had fun even though we lost.
How about you, Megan? What, in your whole career playing lacrosse for South County, what's been the standout moment?
It was my sophomore year. We played West Springfield, and the year before they had destroyed us by an incredible amount. And then our sophomore year was the first time we ever beat them as a school. And it was a really good game, and everyone played their best. And that was when our team just started to get the confidence they needed to do better.
All right. Well, guys, we wish you the best of luck for the remainder of the season. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you
for having us.
All right, so there you have our Triple Edge lacrosse segment. And again, special thanks to Coach Phil Palizzotti for joining us. And Phil will be back every week with the Triple Edge lacrosse segment. Well, now we're going to segue into boys soccer and start off things with our Verizon Fios Game of the Week, because this week was a special one in that we matched up 2 Dulles District foes, Broad Run and here you see in the highlights, Broad Run in the white jerseys, Potomac Falls in the black jerseys, the goalkeeper, Ryan Howard, in that red jersey back in the goal. You're going to see a lot of him because he was the player that really stepped up early on. Hegedus there, the goalkeeper for Broad Run, both in the first half of this one were standouts for their respective teams. This one was early on a very close matchup between these two teams that have been rivals for quite some time. Broad Run last year, the Dulles District regular season champions. Potomac Falls last year, the Dulles District tournament champions. They matched up in the Region 2 final. There you see another great save by Howard. And it was Potomac Falls that got the better of the Broad Run Spartans. And so there was a little bit of revenge on the mind as you see Kevin Reitzel there firing one towards Ryan Howard. So a little revenge on the minds of the Broad Run Spartans, and you could tell by the fact they were taking so many shots on goal. Had it not been for the game that Ryan Howard had in goal, it might have been a different story, and instead this one ultimately going to overtime because neither team able to score a goal in regulation. And one thing that you should know about the Broad Run Spartans is they are known this year for their set pieces. Here's the one goal in overtime, the big score, the assist from Paul Ellington, the goal by Taylor Johnson. And as I was saying, the thing that you should know about these Broad Run Spartans are they are so dynamic on their set pieces. Paul Ellington is a throw-in specialist. He has such a long throw. In fact, sometimes he throws it well past the mark because just so much momentum and adrenaline, but he was such a difference maker for the Spartans in that game. He brings so much to that team, and that one throw that you saw there that resulted in the decisive game-winning goal, give a lot of that credit to Paul Ellington. Broad Run going to be a very exciting team to watch as we move towards the postseason. All right, but now I'm delighted to be joined on the phone by Paul Frommolt from the Fairfax County Times. Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah, Monica, can you hear me?
Absolutely. Well, Paul, thanks so much for joining us. We missed you in the studio this week.
Well, it's good to know that you missed me.
But certainly wanted to talk with you about a couple of the great stories you've been covering from around the area, because lots of great information there. And one particular subject I know that you've been looking into are some of the great club soccer programs in the area. And it's a great situation because these players that are rivals during the school year on their respective teams are actually teammates on club teams. And I know you got to cover one club team in particular.
Yeah, Monica, you can find all these stories on FairfaxTimes.com. But Calder Street from Centerville High School, Chantilly's Jamal Umar from Chantilly, Robinson's Alex McCumbee, and Langley's Roshan Patel. We've talked about all these players because they're the top teams on their individual high school programs. They also are on the team, the GFA 91 Elite out of Great Falls, and it's a great program with Coach Ed Beach, and that program has 12 out of the 18 kids headed to college next year. I just focused on the 4 kids from Fairfax County. You see Jamal Umar's going to James Madison, McCumbie's going to Christopher Newport, Patel's going to William and Mary, and Street, I believe he's going to UNC Wilmington. So it's an interesting story about how these kids have to balance their club, they have to balance their work, their grades, because to get into college you have to have the grades, and they have to balance their high school soccer teams too. One thing that I didn't really know is when you have these top flight juniors, they really have to focus their year, that junior year, on their club programs, because that's where they get really noticed, is these club showcases. So one thing I heard from all of these seniors is now that they're seniors, they can really focus on high school. They already have their college out of the way, and they can really give back to their high school this year.
And it's interesting because a lot of people in the region have been talking, as we've talked on this program, about Najjar playing for DC United, and so giving up the opportunity obviously to play in college, but a lot of players in soccer going straight from the high school level to the pro level, but these athletes on this particular club team getting to move on to the next level and play, and I know that they get a lot of benefit from that program and a great coach that they're working with.
Mm-hmm. And Paul Tenorio of the Washington Post has a nice story on the kids going from high school straight to pro. But Ed Beach, he's a great story. He's a 1988 graduate of Yorktown High School. He played for George Mason University from 89 to 93. He's also been an assistant coach for the Patriots. So, he knows how to play high school sports in this area. He knows how to get recruited by college, and he was a recruiter for George Mason. So he has a complete rounded view of how all this works. And most kids just think, okay, well, I'm a good player. I'm going to go to a couple showcases. Someone's going to notice me, and I'll go to a college. It doesn't really work like that. You have to really work in the classroom, and you have to be a good fit for that team. If you're such a great attackman and one team is looking for some defenders in this recruiting class, it's not going to work out. So he kind of explains the whole process to these kids.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit now about girls soccer, because I know one team that's been getting a lot of notice this season is the Westfield team, which after last year where they had a season which was a little disappointing to some of the members of that program, they have been on fire so far this season.
Yeah, they were 4-9 last year, and that was under Chris Goddard, who we all know is just a great coach, former coach now for the Westfield Bulldogs, was there since the beginning. He leaves. You got first-year head coach Christy Williams coming in. And you didn't really expect much from this team, but they have 5 really, really good seniors on the team with Katie Jenkins, Jenny Greenleaf, Abby Sands, Brittany Bonzano, and Lauren Hicks. They're really stepping up at the right time, and these kids have been playing together for so long that they're really clicking. A lot of teams to start. Now we're halfway through the season, but they've started out. Robinson comes to mind. Teams that just haven't clicked yet. But this team has really clicked from the very beginning, and that's why they're doing so well early on.
Well, and Paul, one thing I read in the article that you wrote is that the athletes were saying that for them, the pressure is off a bit because they're just taking it one game at a time. People may not have these ultimate expectations for them, even though that might change based on the season that they're having. But they feel like the place that they're going and that they have to go is up. And so that takes a little bit of the pressure out of the equation, and that might be helping.
Yeah, Lauren Hicks told me that they're underdogs. They have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And also, it kind of hurt that last year, that 4 wins last year. That hurt this team. And they actually, when they beat Robinson on March 23rd and then 2 days later beat South Lakes, they already tied their win total from last year. And Coach Christy Williams told me after the South Lakes win, they closed the book on last season and they're moving forward. So, yeah, they have that underdog mentality. They don't think anybody thinks they're good. And they have that chip on their shoulder from last year as well, so it's all worked out well for them.
Well, and the other thing that you have to mention, and you've talked a lot about that win over Robinson, which year in and year out is one of the top girls soccer programs in this area. But when you look at the caliber of the teams that they're beating, I mean, McLean comes to mind. McLean having a stellar season, but a blemish on the record is their loss to Westfield. And so it's not just that they're winning, but they're beating really good teams.
Yeah, McLean, WT Woodson, Robinson. That win over Robinson was the first time these seniors have beaten Robinson in their high school career. So, yeah, they're beating good teams. They're getting confident victories, and this is a really good team this year.
All right, well, Paul, let's talk a little bit about some sports that I know are near and dear to your heart. First of all, starting off with baseball. And the big story for baseball is obviously a lot of these teams had the opportunity to play in spring break tournaments where they got a lot of great experience. And a lot of the teams from the area actually experienced a lot of success in these tournaments.
Yeah, McLean was one team I talked to. I talked with Riley Byro after they came back, and they traveled to California to go in their spring break tournament, and they did very well. McLean, one of the top teams in this area, traveling all to the other coast to play teams. It's what 2,700 mile trip to San Diego to participate in the Lions Invitational Tournament, and they finished with a 3-2 record against some really good teams. So that really gave them confidence heading into the district schedule, because district schedule started right after spring break. Another interesting story, one that's near and dear to my heart as well, is the Westfield Bulldogs. They traveled to Sarasota, Florida, and also Centerville was there, Madison was there to participate in a tournament. An interesting thing about Sarasota, Florida is that's where the Baltimore Orioles had their spring training. So, and remember, Brandon Snyder, a 2005 Westfield graduate, was up with the Orioles. He's still on AAA for the Orioles, but he came up for spring training, and they got a chance to watch an Orioles practice that was closed to the media because Brandon Snyder got them in. Snyder went and saw one of their games and talked to the team. And a lot of these kids never played with, these kids didn't play with Brandon Snyder. They just know the legend of Brandon Snyder from Westfield. So it was a great opportunity for them to be able to see, if you work hard, this is where you can come. Obviously, Brandon Snyder, who was drafted out of high school by the Orioles and is expected to be up in the big leagues sometime this year.
Absolutely. Earlier this year during football season when Eddie Royal was back at Westfield and the football team got to get a bit of a pep talk from him before the game, I think a lot of the football players felt the exact same thing about getting to hear from someone who's now living the dream that a lot of them have.
Yeah, this is a guy that wore the Bulldogs uniform, and now he's in the big leagues. And it's someone you can look up to, someone that you can relate to because you're wearing a Bulldogs uniform right now.
And one last team I know that you've covered that also had a lot of success over spring break was, of course, South County.
Yeah, South County had a fantastic spring break. They finished 5-0. They won the 32-team Mingo Bay Classic Baseball Tournament. South County just did amazing. And Mark Luther told me you could really see the team pulling together and becoming a team rather than a group of people, and that's huge. They didn't travel as far as Westfield and Centerville and Madison or McLean, but I think they got the most out of it because going 5-0, winning a big 32-team tournament, that is huge going on into the district play again against a great Patriot district.
All right, well, Paul, we talked about Najjar going on into play for DC United. Now, West Springfield has a player who, although he's committed to go on to play at the college level, certainly is getting a lot of looks for the major league programs. And so you have to talk a little bit about Bobby Wall.
Yeah, last Wednesday night I got a chance to watch Bobby Wall pitch and against WT Woodson, and it was pretty amazing. I've seen some kids, some baseball players, get the interest from scouts, but there was 5 or 6 professional scouts with radar guns behind the backstop. There's scouts representing the Cubs, the Los Angeles Angels, the Milwaukee Brewers, the Philadelphia Phillies, all watching Bobby Wall. And the big thing about Bobby is he pitches so fast. He can top out at 93 miles per hour as a high schooler, and that's gotten a lot of notice for him. Obviously, he has 3 great pitches with a changeup and a slider, but it's that fastball that people are really focused on. And he's committed to Ole Miss. And speaking of the Snyders, Brandon Snyder's younger brothers who play at Ole Miss, so he's committed there, but he's going to have a lot of people think he will be a higher round draft pick in the first year MLB Major League Baseball Players Draft in June. So he's going to have a choice to, jump right into the big leagues or go to college, and that's something he's dealing with right now. He's talked to all 30 professional baseball teams. 25 of those teams have come to visit him at his home to talk to him. So he has a big choice because he's really a hot prospect right now.
So a great story to follow as the season progresses and to certainly see what the ultimate decision is that Bobby Wall makes.
Yeah, and just having the opportunity to talk with him. He is a great kid, too. He's so balanced, and he's basically like, I'm just having fun. He says when he gets on the mound, all he focuses on is just pitching a high school game. It's fun to him. It's a game to him. He's a really great kid, and I really wish the best for him. There's few kids that I see that really impressed me, and Bobby Wall is one of them.
Well, it's great to hear that because particularly that's one thing that you think of when you talk about these athletes that are going to be possibly going on to the professional level very soon is that they get to enjoy this time in high school where they're playing. The fun of it is the biggest thing that matters.
Yeah, I mean, in June, his life, he could immediately become an adult making a great amount of money, living on his own, doing baseball as a living, and all that could change here and over the summer. So he is really trying to focus on the last little bit of being a kid that he can.
All right, now let's finally talk about softball a little bit because we've talked about the McLean baseball program, but the McLean softball program also having a great season so far and also getting to participate in one of these great spring break tournaments.
Yeah, McLean also did a great job at their tournament. And the thing about McLean is their offense. They are so good on offense. And one person I talked to was third baseman Jesse Straub, who's hitting .600 with 7 doubles and 13 RBIs. She's just fantastic for this team. She says that their coach has a very intense philosophy about hitting. They practice hitting at least an hour a day in practice. They also focus on the mentality of hitting. They picture what they want to be doing. And right now they have been doing just fantastic. Some stats I have, they've scored a total of 94 runs. That's when I wrote this article on Monday. They had a 5-0 victory over Madison on Friday night. 14 of 15 players have recorded an RBI, and 10 players with 4 or more runs batted in. So just all 1 through 9, they are doing fantastic on offense.
Absolutely. You know, when I read your article, the thing that stood out to me was that the number of players that had 4 or more RBIs, because it certainly shows that this team has so much talent on it, and that's going to make them really dangerous.
Well, they started with 2 victories, outscoring Marshall and Thomas Jefferson 31-1. So, I mean, that they started out real great, and they went down to the Grand Strand Softball Classic, and they went 4-1 during spring break there. That's their only loss on the year thus far, is that loss in the tournament. And, you know, Coach Maurice Twill told me that going down to the Myrtle Beach, it was successful for a lot of different reasons. It confirmed everything they thought about the team, because they came in, they had a great year last year, lost a heartbreaker to South County in the region semifinals, and they bring everybody back. So they're thinking, okay, we're going to be a good team. They go down to this tournament, do very well, and just confirm that, yes, we are a good team and we will go far in this region.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back in the studio next week.
Most definitely, Monica. Thanks for giving me a call.
All right, so obviously Paul Frumwood out covering lots of the different teams in this area, and particularly those spring break tournaments. Great articles that he wrote about the experiences that those teams got to have playing some competition that they wouldn't otherwise get to see during the regular season. Well, we definitely want to highlight to you our 2 Verizon Fios games of the week. First of all, starting off with tomorrow night, a big Patriot District matchup between Woodson and Annandale. These are 2 of the top teams in the Patriot District, so there's a lot on the line for this one. A lot of teams looking to see what happens with this one, because it's going to have big implications for rankings later on when we move towards the postseason tournaments. But as Coach Palazzati was saying, Annandale obviously has a lot of speed. One thing you want to do with them is to try to take away their transition game, because they are definitely a dangerous team on offense. Now, the other Verizon Fios games of the week that we have this week to tell you about are 2 soccer games, a doubleheader in Loudoun County this week. The Stonebridge Bulldogs will be squaring off against the Robinson Rams. These are 2 top programs year in and year out. The Verizon Fios games of the week will be both the girls game and the boys game, and particularly focusing in on that boys game. We talked about Alex McCumbee with Paul. Stonebridge has a lot of talent. Randy May, a great coach. So great games that will be taking place. And again, a lot of people have their eyes on those games to help figure out how things might shake out in the region later on in the season. Well, before we go, we once again want to thank the folks that help make our program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. Also, special thanks to Craig Sturbutzel for the fantastic photos he's provided all season long, and to Dan Sousa for all of the information and content he provides every single week. You can get copies of this program at www.pressboxvideo.com. And you can check out our website where you can see highlights, interviews, and more. Become a fan of the Northern Virginia Sports Report on our Facebook page, and don't forget to send us any comments or story ideas that you have. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I'll see you next week.